Alright gang, we have some really wonderful updates tonight. So this is the upper portion of the intake manifold. I swapped over the full throttle body linkage assembly from the junkyard vehicle. For whatever reason, well, this is kind of chewed up, but I extracted this to use for parts. This, I don't know what happened here. These are obviously the mirror image. This is the original one, which was attached, the cables were still attached to it. This has been sitting in the vehicle the whole time. I actually bent it back. It was worse than this. How, why, when, where, how this got so bent up, I don't know. Like I said, this is straight on. It was in line with this piece. So if you can picture this here being in line with this, that is way off. And this, okay, so for this actual throttle blade was from this and was attached to it. It was all disconnected here. This is from the junkyard one. I removed this, so now this lives with this one. But anywho, got that done. Found another little variance. So these came from a 95 Discovery. They are much too long. So by my calculation, I took some measurements here. So this is the amount of engagement into the lower piece, this line here. So this is how much thread is utilized threading in. This measurement I took from inserting in here. Well, it doesn't show much here, but this lower portion of this white here is as long as the bolt needs to be in order to engage fully. So I believe what I'm looking for is more of like a, let's do it this way, probably a 45 somewhere in there, because 50 would be dead on, but just so it doesn't bottom out, I'd be looking at more of a 45. And it's an M8, because I know this is a 6mm head, so M8 by 45 is what I'm going to be looking for. However, one feature here, the full length one, which is actually 80, M8 by 80, there is one of these at the center. So that's five shorties, approximately 45 millimeter, and a single 80 millimeter. Same washer. So that means I get to track down some nice shiny new hardware for that. Another very exciting update is, let's see, this is, I believe, the driver's side. Not sure how well this is showing up. There we go. This, my friends, is bad juju. This is a crack extending at least from here to here. So this whole length here has a pretty substantial crack, which, remember all the toasting that we saw in here and in here? Lines up just perfectly with that. So that's actually good news, because that means then rather than having some kind of internal leak, this was blowing, 1800 degree exhaust onto the head. It sucks, but that's a good confirmation of what was actually going on. So now I need to track down driver's side, part number HRC2469, which is good because this has two stuck studs and I didn't want to get those out. So more trials and tribulations ahead. Standard operating procedure. All right, good people. Some time has passed. We've been jumping between different vehicles, different projects, all sorts of fun stuff going on. This is where we are on Jimmy, the green Land Rover Discovery 1. We have it just about all together except for the upper intake manifold. We've got the whole serpentine belt circuit run. We have all the pulleys on. The fan is on, the shroud is on, alternator is on and wired. You have your alternator, You have your 12 volts direct, pretty much direct from the fuse box here. Then you have another I believe this is your signal wire. This is actually your tachometer. It may also double as another signal wire, but you have one single spade connector on the back here. In the middle, you have a little 10 mil stud, if it's the nice original one. And then you have your big heavy cable coming directly from the fuse panel. Serpentine belt run through there. We have our, I believe, so we got our upper radiator hose. This is the not power steering. I think this is the automatic transmission cooler. There's one above, one below. They each have an O-ring. Make sure that that is on and the connections are clean and the O-rings have been lubed. This is the oil cooler, upper here and then lower down there. All that's been put in. We are completely done except for the exhaust manifolds on both sides, which then get plugged into the catalytic converters below. That is a fun little story because one thing that has delayed this project, this is our passenger side, US passenger side exhaust manifold. This is the original one. This is the original driver's side manifold. If you look closely here, we found a crack. So over a week ago, I was ready to put we were about where we are now, just about, generally speaking, and I found a big fat crack in the middle of this, which I think I did, if maybe it'll be in this video or not, I did find evidence that there was a hot spot on the cylinder head on the driver's side. This is a great thing to find, with that being the case, that there wasn't actually a failure internal or it was getting too tremendously hot, but that exhaust was exiting the exhaust manifold rather than coming out the back. So it was just, 1200 degree air just toasting the side of the head. Went to the interwebs, went to the community, and sourced a good replacement. These are actually little part number mining. So this is HRC Hotel Roger Charlie 2469, 1990, looks like a 96 casting, so a 1997 vehicle. This is, I don't know what year it came from, but the part number HRC 2469, HRC 2939. The designators are, I know, across all the different part numbers. So this is a 68, so this is a matching pair, 2468, 2469, 2939. The matching pair to this one is 2938, I believe. All that to say, side by side, these are exactly the same, just a slightly different generation. I don't know if this is older or newer. I suspect it's slightly older, but it doesn't matter because the problem spot here, no evidence of a crack. Very good to see. This is also slightly less rusty. I got to get all this goop off, but the mating surfaces are actually cleaner, so that's really good to see. And the studs that came with it are great, so I'm going to reuse those. These studs were not as great. This one was cut off. Well, they're okay. This one was cut off. Unfortunately, this is the one I'm going to reuse, and these studs are not great. They might be usable. I do have a matching set of 6 studs. I'm not going to bother with that. It's not worth the headache. These look fine. They don't have to be brand new. They just have to be good and working. These, I do think I want to replace, so that's going to hold me up a little bit. But that's next, getting these on. After the exhaust manifolds go on, it's spark plugs, spark wires. I'm waiting to put this on because the throttle body extends into this area. The next step, I think, is getting the studs off of that one, which is annoying. But we got our exhaust manifolds on, then our spark plugs are going to go in, the wires are going to go on, then the upper intake manifold is going to go on. We've got our cables set up here. We have the new, this is a blend of parts that came with this vehicle and one from the junkyard. This whole linkage has been replaced, lubed up, and is good to go. And cleaned up. I gave it a nice cleaning and I kind of regapped the throttle body. This goes to coolant line to the intake manifold. This is actually a preheater. Coolant runs through the throttle body direct from the engine block. So in closed circuit, running conditions. So basically, as soon as the vehicle turns on, no matter what the temperature is, you're going to have coolant running through here. This then plumbs into the radiator. I actually, off camera, I cranked this. The fuel relay is on, so it is technically pumping fuel to it, but there's no spark. I hooked up the battery and I just ran it for maybe 4 or 5 seconds. It has new oil in it, brand new oil. So I just wanted to build a little bit of oil pressure. I will do that again right before the actual initial start. And the alternator is hooked up. It has good green coolant in it. I prefer to do the orange. I think it's actually a GM product, the orange Dex Cool coolant in it. But since the coolant in this looked good, we're just going to go with green. And we're going to fill it up. I was going to do just a water flush and flush it out, but I don't think I need to do a flush on this. Time will tell, but that's the plan for now. So, to recap, exhaust manifolds, upper intake manifold, coolant, spark wires, firing order, of course, and that's going to be it. It's going to be good to go. So, I'm going to probably fight with those studs for a little bit. Now that I have a good one here, I may just plumb this one up now, since I don't have to deal with the studs there. But we'll see. That's where we are, and it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be running tonight, but my hope is, so it's a Friday night, my hope is this weekend, maybe even tomorrow morning, it's going to be ready to fire. All right, one small victory. That one broke off halfway. There's still lots of material left, but trusty Knipex. We got this one free. Just heat, oil hammer, heat, oil hammer, heat, oil hammer, vice grip, heat, oil hammer. Vice grips didn't end up doing it, but oh, come on. The trusty $60. Actually, no, these aren't quite 60, but they're enough. So, threads, I can't tell, there's too much oil, but this looks not terrible. So, got a new stud that can go in there. Do the same thing on this one. This one is in good shape. These two, of course you can't really tell much now, they gnarled up the threads on the top quarter inch. So that part was already destroyed. I didn't want to, you know, I'm treating them as if everything I remove, I try and treat as if I'm gonna reuse it, even if I'm not. Sports. So I've still got 3/4 of an inch of material to try and get off. So I'm going to do another heat and oil cycle on it. And this one should come out, and then we've got 2 studs going in, and then I'm just going to put this in. This is the passenger side, and it is the closest to being done. I'm not sure where we are continuity-wise. It's been kind of wacky. Had some hiccups and some stuff that was a huge pain in the butt, and I didn't want to film it. So, here we are. We have the driver's side manifold in. This is the one that came from a donor vehicle, from a friend, or, from an acquaintance online in the Rover community. The part numbers are slightly different, but it was a side-by-side perfect match. So here we are. We have it in. I have there's two different kinds of gaskets. There's the composite that's like a perforated composite material, and then there's this kind of stacked steel or aluminum material. But with that one, I used the... where do we go? Ultra Copper Advanced Formula Gasket Maker. I'm not using it as a gasket. I just do a skim. You guys know I love doing a skim of RTV on these. This is a slightly different style. I believe this is 97, 98, 99 they started doing this. It's a significantly longer bolt with a spacer. I suppose it's a... these are dissimilar metals. I think this is steel, but I believe they're 2 different grades of steel. So my thought is that, or I suspect Land Rover's thought was that having this acting as sort of a phenolic spacer will allow it to have better clamping force rather than having 2 similar metals expanding and contracting at similar rates. They have them contracting at a different rate. That thing always gets chewed up, but it's on. These are torqued to 20 Newton meters, which is just under 15 foot-pounds. And these are this is a nice kind of style of bolt for torquing. It's just got much better grip on it. The 12 point, It's actually a 12 millimeter that fits the best, 12.12 millimeter. So we got 8, 2 on each cylinder. So this one fought me so hard last night, but successfully got 2 studs replaced. This is an original, which is in great shape, and I am not going to mess with it. This surface is clean and ready for gaskets. What I did was, I was trying to think of the best way to go about this. I don't remember exactly what I did on the red one, but I have the catalytic converters dummied up on jack stands, or one jack stand. Generally where they're going to be living, the front O2 sensor, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the front O2 sensor is not connected. You can just see it, barely see it there. Is not connected. And I thought about I was trying to figure the best course of action. I think the best thing to do is to attach the manifolds to the catalytic converter and then hang it up and just get a couple of bolts in. But I do not have the mental energy or the physical energy for doing that. So I'm going to get it, probably not both tonight, but got the driver's side in. Now what I'm going to do, next on the docket, is to do the passenger side. As I showed you, it's ready to go in. However, now that this is done, I'm actually going to assemble this side. So spark plugs are going to go in, and then I'm putting the upper intake manifold in. The last of the plumbing, the last of the coolant hoses, throttle body, that will be done, except for the spark plug wires. I'm going to wait on that. But that's my goal for tonight, to get that finished. So it's not going to be exhaust both sides done tonight. It's going to be really driver's side done, which allows me to seal this up finally. So we're going to go with that. Okay, round next complete. We have the passenger side exhaust manifold in. Same deal, skim of the copper-based RTV on the gaskets on both, or on all 4 cylinders. New hardware, new hardware, new standoffs, and I got all 4 plugs in on this side. So the engine is now sealed, except for the intake manifold. I have the catalytic converter down there, just kind of dummied up. I did put the, you see right there, put the front O2 sensor in. It did reach with some slack because I was worried about the cable being too short, but it's got some slack there. I basically, so 6 half turns, 3-fold turns in, I wound it to the left 6 turns to kind of load it up. And then as I tightened it into the catalytic converter, by the time it tightened down, it was just past, resting condition. All that to say, the wires aren't twisted. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So side's complete, just needs to be tacked up there. What I'll do is I will put a skim of the RTV on the gasket, and I will gently set it in there, or I may actually stick it above, and then I'll go underneath and I'll force this up with a jack stand, or force it up by hand, prop it up with a jack stand, and then put the bolts in. Same story on this side as I showed before. Hardware's in, everything is torqued to 20 Newton meters. Plugs are in. This one, the O2 sensor is not connected. Down there, you can't really see it. O2 sensor is not connected because there's a little bit less slack, but once I prop that up, it should be just fine. I also, one thing I did before I put the plugs in, fuel is hooked up, so it was spraying bad fuel in, but I actually cranked it over for about 10 seconds to build oil pressure. I do have an oil pressure gauge. I didn't have it hooked up. It would be somewhere down there in the front of the engine, but I just, in cranking it, it has to be building oil pressure, so it can build oil pressure. So that just gives it a little extra margin once it finally starts up, which might be in the next couple days. We'll see. But here we go. More progress. All right, the exhaust is done. Completely done, which you can't really see all that well there. So we'll go over to this side. There. That's what we're looking at. So both catalytic converters have been mounted up. That is not super hard, but just very annoying to do, especially if the vehicle isn't lifted. It's just barely big enough to slide under, but I realized how much nicer it was working on the red Land Rover with like a 4-inch lift, because everything's much easier to get at. So I found for the passenger side, I got this one and this one started from above. I got it mounted up, put jack stands under it, lined up in place. I slid the gaskets with a skim of RTV, I stuck the one for the passenger side on the exhaust manifold and lifted the catalytic converter up to it. On the opposite side, I did the opposite, and I rested it on the catalytic converter, stuck it in place there, and then shimmied it up onto the manifold. So this one below, I got all 3 nuts started from below, and this is where a extremely long extension with the wiggle is super helpful. So I did that for all 3 on the driver's side. Passenger side, I got 2 started with a 12 mil flex head ratcheting. Love this thing. And then I used this extension, still a wobble head with this socket. So the frontmost one, oh, lost my light. So, hang tight. This stud here, the one in the front, with a 6-inch extension, I came from here because the differential gets in the way. So I came up, that's approximately where it is, came up from below for the front one. Once again, we've got, if you're doing this stud, I did it from in front above the differential. This one and this one I did from behind, or from above with the ratcheting wrench. Super handy. Then all 3 of these, because they're quite a bit farther back and there's more clear space below them, just straight up with the 12-inch extension, zip, zip, zip. Very easy access. Still annoying to crawl around and have the trans mount and everything whacking you in the face, but that's it. So exhaust is now sealed, except for I do need to track down. What am I looking at here? These nuts were, the previous owner kindly separated this for me. I zip tied it up for transport, but I need to track down nuts for each. It's a very thick, fine thread, so it shouldn't be an issue, but this is not technically sealed up. But everything in front of the O2 sensors is clear. So now, I left this off so I would have access to down here. Turns out I didn't need it, so we're gonna get the plenum, intake plenum on, throttle body all linked up with our cables here, our sensors there, and then we're gonna fill the final fill of the cooling system, and it's gonna be good to go. So hang tight, we're in the final stretch. All right, boys and girls, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Intake is on. Got that sealed up, got all of these spark plug wires run to their respective location. This is my first time actually wiring up the coil style. They're not in the, I'm probably going to switch them around because some of them are kind of funky lengths. This blue set is actually what came from the Range Rover, if you guys remember that. I am so excited. This is it. We're going to find out very quickly if this engine was junk from the get-go or if it was misdiagnosed and was totally fine and someone started a bunch of unnecessary work, and here we are. But this is it. Plugs are in. The reservoir has been filled to the top now, pre-bleeding, because obviously there's a lot of air in the system. So we are up to right at that little cross is our level mark. I'll come back to that. And then our radiator has a separate, I mean, it's basically the same. It's water, so it should be the same across it as long as there aren't major air pockets. Even if there are, should level out, but we are just barely not high enough to get into the throttle body preheater hoses. So, enough jib jab. I'm going to get you set up on the tripod. The driver door is still janky, so I'm going to sort of hop in there. I got our wires run. Like I said, I'm going to go back through and tidy up the wires, make sure that the right ones are in the right spot for now. That's where they are. All the fuel injectors have been resealed, so hopefully we're not going to see any leaks there. There's pressure at the fuel line. There's coolant in the system, as much as there needs to be at first start. I'm going to jiggling with... Oh my gosh, come on. There. There is plenty, there's a full... I actually did change the oil. It is right at the full mark. You'll have to take my word for it. Oop. Okay, there we go. And with no spark plugs, no fuel, I cranked it for maybe 5 to 10 seconds, 2 different times, just to try and build some fuel oil pressure. I'm sure it's still going to be nice and clattery when we start it, but that's it. One last thing, it's not completely done, but the zip tie is from transportation, but I just did a loop of safety wire around it with a little zip to keep it together if we take it out for road test, but interior still not quite there. But get you set up on the tripod and you will get to see what happens and how much terrible noise it makes, or maybe it just smooths right out and is exactly what we hoped for. Battery's in and connected. Let's go. One other thing to note, since the radiator was removed and completely drained, it is going to drink up some oil that's going to be run through the oil cooler. Not enough to probably even show up on the dipstick, but something to watch. The other thing is ATF. There's a trans cooler that is incorporated into the radiator. So right off the bat, the level's going to go low. The color of this is great. It's actually bright red. So someone has done that work recently. But it's in neutral right now. I'm assuming it should be able to go into gear. It shouldn't be low enough that it is not going to go into gear, but something to keep aware of. As well as, of course, we're going to monitor. As soon as I get it out, I'm going to pull it outside, park it, and let it idle outside, assuming it runs. And we're going to pop both of these caps, or I'm going to crack this one just so it can breathe, and then I'm going to remove this one and watch the level. But, okay, enough talk. Here we go. See what happens.